I'm Lincoln Ritter. I'm Director of Engineering here at Animoto, and among other things, I help run our data engineering team. And I just want to talk a little bit more about how over the last year, maybe 6 months to a year, we've sort of transformed Animoto into a more data-oriented company. And really I want to talk about how our experiences weren't, what we found was that our key challenges weren't actually technical. They were sort of process, cultural, and sort of a shift in mindset around how we viewed data and how the ways that we deliver data. So let me start with a little bit of background about what Animoto is. Animoto makes it easy for anyone to create powerful professional video. And for me, that means I get to take pictures of my family and video clips of my family, like just as I normally do. And with a few clicks, I can create a really beautiful video that in some ways is more vivid than the experience themselves. And it turns out this is actually great for businesses too. You can create great marketing videos with a fraction of the effort and cost as other ways that you could create those videos. But it's important to realize, and the contrast is not as high as I was hoping here, so sorry about the text there. It looks great up here on the presenter view. This says why data. So Animoto isn't your sort of traditional data company, right? We don't like optimize ad placements, and we're not like some sort of recommendation engine. We don't match up buyers and sellers in some sort of fancy e-commerce thing. So, you know, why data? Like, what were we thinking when we sort of endeavored to sort of level up our data and analysis efforts? And really, we wanted what any product development company wants. We wanted to reduce the risk in our product development, and we would like to validate the product that we're building along the way while we're developing it. We'd like to do that in as sort of frugal a way as possible. We don't want a lot of waste. You know, we want to run a pretty tight ship here. We'd like better visibility into how our business is actually doing, and sort of our operations. We want a better operational intelligence and just sort of increase the sophistication of our business decision making. And this is all, of course, to like improve our chances at achieving a great product market fit. So we decided that the only way we could achieve this was to foster more rapid experimentation. And to experiment properly, we really had to build good measurement and good feedback loops. And you know, I guess that all comes down to that we needed data, but it was an important realization that the data wasn't enough. Just having the data wasn't enough. We needed our old method. We had data before, but our old method of delivering that to stakeholders was really kludgy and cumbersome. Like, it would all be like custom data pools requested of an engineer or an analyst. They'd sort of make this bespoke collation of data in a big Excel workbook or something like that. And that's just not going to facilitate rapid iteration like we needed. We needed to get that data and the ability to explore that data to stakeholders directly. So here's what we did, and this is actually the easy part. You know, technically, we had a bunch of sort of heterogeneous data, and we had limited dev and ops resources to apply to this problem. And quite frankly, we either the tools weren't there or we weren't educated about the tools that were appropriate to what we were trying to accomplish. And so we started looking, and we looked at a bunch of tools. We looked at all the usual suspects. You know, of course, we had custom code for reporting stuff that when it broke, people would come knocking at my door, which was really fun. We had you know, things like Jasper, Pentaho, RJ Metrics, all those kind of things, right? And in the end, we settled on we sort of knit together our own solution through AWS Data Pipeline, AWS REDSHIFT, and Looker. So here's what it looks like. Under the covers, we've got a bunch of services that power our application. You know, we've got a bunch of clients. They feed into a bunch of different kind of databases, right? We use AWS Data Pipeline to schedule our ETL activities, and AWS just sort of manages the dependencies and scheduling of that. So there's no extra, you know, ops overhead for us. We just have to sort of define it, what we want to have happen, and then it just happens. And then all that, then that's responsible for funneling that data all into AWS REDSHIFT, which is a nice analytics-oriented database that's managed by AWS. And crucially for us, it speaks SQL, right? So all our engineers and analysts already know SQL. A lot of tools use SQL. So that allowed us to get started quickly. We didn't have to learn some whole new data transformation language to get started doing what we wanted to do. Which leads us to Looker. We actually picked Looker for a number of reasons. Again, Looker speaks SQL, and that allowed us to plug right into Redshift. And a lot of the authoring tools are grounded in SQL, which allowed us to get started really, really quickly. And Looker's great for bridging the gap between sort of relatively unsophisticated users and really sophisticated users. So we were able to present data for, in terms of like dashboards and things like that, that people were used to consuming sort of statically, but then allow them, use that as a gateway drug and build them sophistication in terms of exploring data and like asking their own questions, getting their own answers, and then all the way up to like, engineers and analysts who are really intimately familiar with the implementation details and could really craft some custom stuff, but do that all right within Looker, so where they were already working. So it really provided a really smooth ramp there. And some of that adaptability was also really important in that we didn't have to define everything up front. We didn't need to know the whole picture before we started. It allowed us really good tools to iterate on our own, in our own solution. And of course, unfortunately, any tool that we'd pick wouldn't provide everything we possibly needed. But Looker provided some great ways to sort of bail out if we needed to. So the ability to sort of export in a live way data that you sort of defined in Looker into like Excel workbooks or Google Sheets and sort of enhance that workflow with live data was actually really, really cool, and we use that a lot. So those are the technical challenges, right? And we built that. Hey, that's great. But we found that it really was in the transformation to an organization with ubiquitous self-serve data access that really it brought about some interesting challenges that we didn't anticipate. And really what it comes down to is that when I said that Animoto's product wasn't data, it turns out I was totally wrong. It turns out that a key product that Animoto does produce is its data. Even if it's an internal product, it's a really important product, and we were underserving. We were just not acknowledging the sort of really the importance of it before. And it might be obvious that you should treat your internal tools just like other products, but I think it's especially true for data since it has such a big impact on decision making in the rest of the company. And I think it's even doubly true, or maybe that multiplication-wise becomes like quad true, if you're really trying to change the culture within your organization to be sort of more oriented around data. So you really got to think about how users are going to interact with that. And so treating it like a fully fledged product, it sort of changed how we thought about things. And of course, we thought as product developers, well, how do we apply like our sort of normal product development ethos to this? And we found that there were a couple things that sort of got in our way or that we needed to overcome in order to really be successful here. One way is we noticed that the way people gain trust in that data changed when we moved to more self-serve data access. We learned that the way that we have to educate people about how to use that data and how do we get them to engage with that data and shape that experience of using that data, that we didn't give that enough importance when we started out, and we really learned that we needed to treat that better. And then yeah, we realized, hey, this is a product. Like, how do we iterate on this product like we would anywhere else? How do we manage changes, and how do we control impact of something we didn't anticipate happening as that change kind of propagates throughout the system. So first let's talk about the trust issue. I thought this was really interesting. In the old model, when somebody would walk up to an analyst or an engineer and say, hey, I need this piece of data, and the engineer and analyst would go and like crank out some big pile of goo for them. really the trust in that data came down to the person who's requesting it, trust in the analyst or the engineer. They trusted that person to deliver it to them. Now we've got this system, this platform that's delivering that data, and we have to change the way people achieve sort of trust to trust the system and the process that generates and delivers that data. Which was really interesting to realize. And we noticed a couple of key things that hamper that trust, particularly variance of data between what people expect or between different sources, and the way we handle sort of production disruptions in the delivery of data, or just run-of-the-mill latency and delivery of data. So when it comes to variance and authority, we sort of, it's really important to get this right because people won't use it to guide their experimentations if they don't believe the data is right. So we take a three-part approach. One, we build in automatic, data checks, right? We try to collect data that looks at the same sort of thing from different angles, and then we try to compare them once it gets, into the back end and all the transformations have been made. And we also try to make a publicly visible dashboard that shows that variance so that people can say, hey, you guys are achieving your objectives in terms of your desired, level of accuracy or variance, or you're not, right? And it gives people the ability to answer that question themselves and always see the status for that kind of thing. We noticed that it exposed a lot of sort of alternate sources of truth. People had their own little data repositories sitting around with their own big workbooks or access databases or all sorts of things like that. And that really hampered our ability to validate and come to a common understanding of what particular kinds of analysis was actually telling us. Because people have their own slightly different interpretations of data or slightly different ways of calculating certain things or whatever. And so we had to aggressively migrate these sort of personal warehouses into the sort of global warehouse. I also mentioned latency and disruptions. So to some degree, we sort of have committed to always having some amount of delay in the time that data gets produced to when it shows up in the analysis tools. Some of that's normal, but unless there are clear expectations around that and clear ways for people to sort of verify that everything's working normally, people will think that any delay in the delivery of that data represents some sort of disruption or some sort of breakdown of the platform. And we really needed to be very aggressive about saying, okay, you know what, this is the normal latency that for data to show up. We're going to give you a way to check on the latency so you can always see the most recent data that's been loaded and see sort of the health of the system and things like that. And so that people get used to just thinking about that system health and checking on that stuff and whatnot. And then we also elevated the importance of disruptions in our data platform to the same level as for our sort of production external product, right? So if something goes wrong, we get paged and we start communicating very publicly to the entire company, whether we think they use the data tools or not. They're going to know that we're on it and we're handling it, and this is what the impact was, and this is what our steps to resolution are, and this is the post-mortem on the incident and all that stuff. Because it just fosters trust that, you know what, this is a first-class citizen. Like, this is not some secondary thing. This is as important as anything else we do. I talked a little bit about how we need to educate users and get people to engage with the product. To really benefit from ubiquitous data access, really everybody's got to be on board, and they've got to be willing to try and willing to ask questions and willing to play with the tool and things like that. In the past, again, people would sort of ask for a custom report or something like that, and then we'd deliver it, and that would be the end of it. Now we're seeing that, well, to really do our best at getting people to use this tool and to really understand our data and really make it sort of contextually relevant to them so it really sticks, we take those requests for new reports as sort of an opportunity to almost pair program and say, okay, let's sit down together and I'll guide you through how to use this tool. It's not about oh, you can make a graph like this or a chart like this, but it's really about learning how to understand our data and interact with our data and really deeply understand it. This is a big investment up front, but we think it's going to pay a lot of dividends over time because people will know our product better. They'll understand, they'll be more sophisticated in how to ask and answer questions about the way that our business operates. And it'll free up our analysts to actually do real deep analysis where they're specialized to do it instead of just cranking out reports. And I think this is really, really key to moving faster. But this also has exposed some challenges in terms of user experience. At first we were like, oh man, look at all these dimensions we can expose and all these different measures, and this is really cool, and just like every relationship in the system should be totally exposed because, why limit what questions you can ask and what answers you can get? And this was totally wrong. At least it was totally wrong for us. People would see all this stuff and immediately just get turned off by it and be like, you know what, I can't do this. This is way too complex. I don't understand what all these things mean. The worst thing you can do, yeah, we want to make people be able to ask and answer questions, but the worst thing we could do is do something that would make them not ask the question at all. And that's what we were doing by providing this sort of overwhelming complexity, even if the tools were really cool from an engineering point of view. So we've really had to scale back stuff and really be careful about pruning what experience we give to the user and target explorations and views to particular use cases, and just really be thoughtful about that stuff because we want to do it right and we just don't want to drive people away. And then of course, to support all of this, well, I said that data, for us, we need to treat it like a first-class product, even if it's an internal one. But how do we get better at our external products? Well, we iterate. We ship something. We see how it works. We try to get feedback from our users, and then we do it again, and we do it again, and we do it again. And what we found is that we need to apply all the stuff that we learned and have learned over the years from doing sort of agile software development to data. We need a sort of great data development lifecycle and the tools to support it, just as we do for our software for our external product, right? And I got to be honest, I don't totally know what this means. I don't totally know what these solutions are, but we're facing challenges that seem like, that's what we're running up against. There's a couple of key areas, right? Like I said, we sort of knit this whole thing together from a bunch of tools, and I don't think that's uncommon, but it does make it hard to have sort of a cohesive, collaborative experience, and the authoring experience is hard because you'll have transformations done in one repository data pipeline. You'll have lookml often somewhere else. You'll have the application code or instrumentation in the application. It's really hard to coordinate activities for all that stuff and have sort of multi-user collaboration, multi-developer collaboration on that. So we have to think about what the impact is on our tools. We just have to work on the tools for that. As a developer of web services and stuff like that, I know that big monolithic code bases and coupling is really a killer for velocity. Well, this is a huge problem for us in terms of data. It sort of seems natural that you would have some sort of coupling between the production of data in the client and maybe the all the way in the reporting end and the warehouse. Be like, oh, there's some correspondence between the columns there and the columns there. But as we got to remember that the product's changing all the time, the way we're trying to shape the data product is changing all the time. Coupling is a killer to velocity there. We need to develop tools for abstraction of production and consumption of data so that we can vary both independently, and so that one doesn't ever slow down the other. And of course, if we're going to do that and we're going to change stuff over time, we need good tools for refactoring. We need to be able to test. I want automated tests for everything on our web services team. I expect nothing less in our data engineering. So I want to be able to assert that some user activity from some automated set of actions is going to result in an expected artifact in our data warehouse. I want to be able to do sort of static analysis of some of the stuff in our system, like lookml and whatever, so that I can say, hey, you know what? Just on the face of this is not going to work. This introduces a regression that's not acceptable to us. But right now we don't yet have all the tools we need to do that, to sort of create a cohesive build process and really execute a great sort of continuous integration process for our data platform. I don't know how we're going to do this yet, but I know that we're not going to achieve our true velocity here the potential velocity that we really want without these tools. So, like I said, I don't pretend that we've solved all these problems. Certainly, these are some of the unexpected challenges we ran into when implementing this at a medium-sized startup, and I'm really excited to be working on these problems, and I'm really excited to hear from you guys if maybe you guys have run into some of these issues, and I'm really excited to hear how you guys have tackled them. And I'm really grateful that I got to tell you all about our experiences. So thanks for listening. Please check out Animoto.com and check out Animoto.com/careers. A lot of data folks here, but we're hiring for all sorts of positions, so plug that one. And yeah, I'll take any questions if we have time. Thanks.